an original.
From Story Studio Network.
I want you to think about this. Canadian forestry has a role to play in saving the planet.
Absolutely. The answer is yes.
Welcome to this Story Studio Network podcast series. I'm Dave Trafford. In this series, Aaron Trafford and I will explore a number of ideas that hinge on the notion of Canadian forestry helping to save the world.
There's no path to a net zero carbon economy without the forest sector and forest products, full stop.
We'll talk about how and why Canadian forests have the ability to shift the climate crisis and the economy to build a better future.
There is no machine and no process known to man better than a tree that's sequestering carbon.
We'll explore innovations in forest management that drive a green economy and directly address the climate issue.
We have a significant amount of the world's forest land. With that privilege comes the responsibility of taking care of it.
So welcome in to this special series produced for Forestry for the Future.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, good to go. I just listened to the Kitchen Roundtable again. And it's dawning on me now that there's a lot of information in that episode.
Yeah, pretty good.
And yeah, well, more than a few, I guess it's fair to say, light bulb moments.
No question. I listened back again as well over the weekend, and plenty of learning opportunities in the show. So if you really haven't had a chance yet, make sure you go back and listen to our Kitchen Table Roundtable. It's episode 5 in this 12-part series, and we'd love to get your feedback on it. So, put an ear on it.
And the other thing is, if you've got kids in the house, I'd say, over the age of 8 or 9, listen to it with them, because it would be also really interesting to get a sense of their reaction.
Okay, so in this episode, we want to venture out of the forest, and we want to step into the hustle and the bustle of the big city. In fact, why don't we jump in the car and we'll drive to Toronto's waterfront on Lake Ontario. Now, as we turn onto the westbound Gardiner Expressway, the George Brown College waterfront campus is coming up on the left. And you can see a brand new building that's under construction, expected to be finished in 2024.
Well, I mean, the view from the Gardiner is great, especially because we're in stop-and-go traffic.
Some things haven't changed.
Right, but so why is it that we're so interested in this one particular new campus building?
It's called Limberlost Place, and based on the website at George Brown, it will be the new home of the School of Architectural Studies, the School of Computer Technology, and the Brookfield Sustainability Institute. It's a community learning hub dedicated to research, innovation, and sustainability.
Sounds like a bit of a petri dish for innovation studies.
Mm-hmm. And it's all the stuff we've been sort of talking about in this podcast series. The cool thing is, all of this future thinking education now being housed in a mass timber building. It's the first net zero carbon emissions institutional project in Ontario. It's the province's tallest wooden building.
A completely wooden building? Like no concrete, no steel, no rebar, none of that.
No, not necessarily. There will be some components of the structure that, well, they need concrete and they need steel, but the primary material is wood. So mass timber is easier to use and is just as strong in some cases as concrete and steel.
No, hold on. That literally cannot be right.
No. It's not only right, it's the leading edge technology that's becoming the material of choice by architectural designers. Meet Sindhu Mahadevan.
I am a senior associate and head of R&D at Michael Green Architecture.
Now, Sindhu is an architect in British Columbia. She and her firm put sustainable design front and center. And that prompted me to ask what might be sounding like a dumb question.
You kind of excel at that.
I do. And this might sound like a silly question right off the bat, but if you're talking about sustainable construction, sustainable architecture, can you use anything but wood?
That's a great question. I think sustainability really is responsibility. It's just using what we have in a responsible way and understanding, to the best of our abilities, leaving the planet at least a better place than what we got. So that being said, we do use concrete and steel in our buildings to a certain degree. It's really using the right material for the right project. That being said, there's a lot that we can do with wood. The technology is there. There's a lot more that we can be doing with wood. So I think it's really just finding the right balance of using the right materials and also being challenging ourselves. I think wood is one of the materials we have available, but really challenging ourselves and seeing, what kind of new materials and new construction processes are available to us or that we can invent to really reduce and refine our carbon footprint and kind of really be meaningfully sustainable.
I always think of architecture and architects themselves as sort of where where we get this collision of art and science, right? And I say that in a good way because it's almost like one day you're the chicken, one day you're the egg. You are the result of it, or you are one that created the new innovative idea. And I wonder, where does your voice sit as an architect in the development of new ideas around a very old product? Because I can see how, particularly in forestry, or when we start talking about the use of wood, we've always done it this way. What possible other product can we produce? I'm guessing that a lot has come off of an architect's desk that says, well, why don't you try this?
Yeah, that's true. I think you are right. Sometimes I do feel like a chicken. Sometimes I feel like an egg. I'm kidding. I think a lot of what we do comes from deep collaboration with engineers, with fabricators, with people in the industry. It's a lot of it just comes from really deep collaboration. And what we're doing with wood now is a little bit different than how we have historically been using wood in our buildings. What we do with wood now is we have created newer structural products. And I say newer in a relative way. They've been around for several decades now. Newer structural products called mass timber, where we take pieces of wood, small pieces of wood, anything from dimensional lumber to wood strands, and we glue it together and we refine it and calibrate it in a very specific engineered way to create a strong and durable material that's similar to the strength of steel and concrete. So on the one hand, we are really just learning from nature. On the other hand, we are now using those materials in a slightly different way to build taller, to build faster, to build with a lower carbon footprint. And I think now there are several mass timber products that in the market available now. Some of these maybe you've heard of it, like glue laminated timber, or CLT is a popular one, cross laminated timber, and really all of these materials just use different species of wood and kind of glue it and put it together in a slightly different way to achieve different strengths to do different things in our buildings. And just recently there was another product that came out called Mass Ply Panel that again it's kind of approaches in a slightly different way to achieve kind of a different kind of strength. So I do think there's a lot more that we can do, we can learn, and we can continue to invent just with wood, keeping in mind that nature holds the patent and we're just lucky to be able to explore it.
So I love that. Oh, nature holds the patent and we're just lucky enough to be able to explore it. Can we just have a mic drop moment there for a minute?
Yeah, right?
Because if I'm hearing this correctly, mass timber is manufactured.
Yes.
So that means jobs.
Yes.
And it can be as strong and durable as concrete and steel.
Yes. And yes, in fact, It has similar strength, as Sindhu said, and it's easier to use. I mean, think about it. Cutting a piece of wood takes some effort, but face it, it's not nearly the effort or the energy it takes to cut steel or shape concrete. Sindhu says the cross-laminate timber can be used to span some pretty large areas.
Imagine large open spaces, large roof structures. You're able to span that very efficiently, much like a thin slab of concrete. You're able to span that, and it's also really beautiful to look at too. Glulam is something that's been a little bit around longer. You typically use glulam in kind of as a column or beam structure, so you kind of have your point support structures, and there are several other panels that we can use in a few different ways. So it's kind of really finding the right product, and we're finding the right team to work with to kind of figure out what's the right, combination of materials that would be best suited for your project.
And there are a wide variety of mass timber products that are manufactured and used for different parts of the construction.
There are other products that use strands of lumber, kind of, or like wood fiber almost, that glued in a different way. So you're kind of, in my mind, the ultimate goal ideally would be to, if you're cutting down a tree, think about all the ways that you can use the products that come out of that. And so you're kind of really thinking about maximizing what you can get from this.
When they are doing that harvest, what's the quality of that wood? I can see that if you're a woodworker, you're going to want a different piece of lumber than if you're creating mass timber. Is the strength of it is in the lamination, if I'm hearing you correctly?
Yeah. So typically, mass timber products work with younger trees, and
why would that be?
well, we want to be working with younger trees because we don't want to be disturbing, your old growth forest. You want to be harvesting sustainably. So we typically mass timber products would be working with younger trees that grow quickly, that grow faster. So we're able to kind of keep that carbon cycle going. And the other reason I'd say that, taking a step back, the broader reason in my mind is also that we're kind of now in this climate economy where we need to be not just reducing our carbon footprint in terms of what we build and how we build, but also be creative about storing carbon back in our atmosphere. And buildings are a great way of doing that. So just taking a step back, I think it kind of makes sense the way the way the mass timber industry is set up. It's just really inherently set up to be able to really help that process.
Okay, so this is so cool. Not only are we making better use of the trees that are being harvested to ensure less waste, less carbon release, but we are storing all that carbon in the mass timber building.
Yeah, exactly. So it's easy to see why mass timber is getting a lot of buzz in the construction and development industry. I had a chance to talk to Nick Milestone.
I'm the Director of Sales, Marketing and Project Execution for Mercer Mass Timber, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Mercer International.
He says the use of mass timber in combination with various framing solutions is really gaining some steam.
It's kind of really getting into all applications and all building typologies, be it, as I say, office, residential, warehousing, any form of construction now. A lot of stakeholders, like the Meta companies in California and throughout the US, a lot of architects are now looking at how they can somehow get mass timber into the equation.
Nick estimates that the mass timber market has grown significantly just in the past 6 or 7 years.
When you look at the map of North America, the amount of projects in the last 7 years, it's growing at an incredible rate of, I would say, at least 20% growth per annum, if not more. Everybody's got a mass timber project, or they're looking at a mass timber project. So, I mean, crikey.
Wait. Huh? Wait. Hold on. Did he say crikey?
Crikey.
Yep. He definitely used the C word.
Crikey.
Yeah, couldn't have punctuated the point better.
The stuff we've been looking at is huge. The pipeline is huge. And I think what is the true driving factor is when you get big stakeholders of some big brands who make a commitment, to reduce their carbon footprint or become a net zero business. And especially when they start looking at their assets. And don't forget, we're not just looking at carbon, in the embedded carbon in the actual product in the build system. It's actually about creating better details. So we're actually significantly contributing towards a reduced operating carbon in the building's life cycle, say over 25 years. And the byproducts are people are actually working and living in environments that is much more appeasing to mental health and well-being. You've got the natural biophilia element that wood offers. A good example is if you go into any building and you see wood in the structure, believe it or not, the natural thing to do is to put your hand on the wood. That's our natural connection with nature. You wouldn't do that in a steel building or a concrete building. Why would you? It's very cold. It doesn't offer anything. But and there's been plenty of studies, especially from Europe, proving sort of a productivity in the workplace by having sort of a much calmer environment, reduced heartbeats per minute. It's very difficult to quantify that, but people just enjoy living and working in timber buildings for that reason. So it's got many benefits: embedded carbon, carbon in operation, and the well-being factor.
All right, Nick is right. You do feel calmer, more relaxed in a room or building made of wood, like log cabins and getaways in the forest, right? It's so you can feel calm. I certainly wouldn't reach out to, touch the concrete wall, but clearly the benefits of wood are concrete. Haha. The wood structure contains the captured carbon and has a lower operating carbon, and then also, to put a bow on this, contributes to our well-being.
Okay, so let me add to the bow, because all of those are great benefits, but we can actually now reflect the use of mass timber in ROI, return on investment. Sindhu Mahadevan says mass timber projects come together faster, with less time on the construction site, and requires fewer people because the buildings are actually prefabricated off-site.
Unlike conventional materials, mass timber is inherently prefabricated. It comes from a factory. It comes in, panels or beams or columns. It comes prefabricated. So that means we're kind of, when it comes to site, you're kind of putting it together as a Lego almost, right? As a kit of parts. You're not actually pouring anything on site. So that requires us to work with them very early on and go back and forth through drawings, through 3D models to kind of figure out what this looks like, and kind of figure that out virtually. And so they're able to cut every piece and router everything in their factory, and then it comes to site and it just comes together like Lego.
And Nick says the mass timber construction site is a safer workplace.
Where we're doing more and more off-site to reduce the construction labour on-site, it's a safer environment to be on a construction site now. The more labour on a construction site, that has a higher probability of health and safety incidents, especially when building at height. And of course, mass timber just forms part of that whole BIM execution, prefabricated offsite technology. It's really come at a good time. That's one of the accelerating factors. So when I look at Europe and how that grew between 2000 and 2007 to 2008, it's actually the runway is going to be much shorter here in North America, purely because of the advance in digital technology and construction.
So the better news here is the evolution of off-site manufacturing and digital modeling means more money-saving innovations.
What we'll start to see are through floor and through wall solutions being developed off-site. We're almost creating a kit of parts now that go into build systems. So effectively the floors and the walls especially, will become through wall solutions. So they're more or less near enough finished internally to nearly being finished externally, because you're using lightweight materials. And then you physically just drop it in walls, which are finished. Now, I actually did it, but we didn't think we were being innovative at the time, but it was client driven. We did a project in central London called Dalston Lane. It was a 9-story residential mass timber, all mass timber, sat on 2 stories of concrete podium. And the building was 500 millimeters, that's 1.5 feet away from the next building. There's no way you would have got either scaffold, materials, or labour to access that facade and build it. It was just physically impossible. So we were driven down the route of having to do a load-bearing through-wall solution. What that meant was when we physically dropped the walls in place, we screwed it up and it tightened up on gaskets. It was air sealed tight. The whole wall was complete. So nobody had to put any scaffold, any labour. So that's the next iterative step of off-site technologies, one being mass timber, where we can start creating through-wall, load-bearing wall solutions. When we start doing through-wall, it's all about reducing that construction schedule. So the developer's going to yield quicker on that development. And when we've done very comparative studies of, say, we did one a 9-story independently on a CLT cross-laminated timber frame to a 9-story concrete frame. We reduced the construction schedule by 20%, and that effectively reduced the construction cost by 11% because the whole thing was just quicker. And the developer loved it because he yielded quicker on his project, 20% quicker on his original schedule than he would have done. So again, there's some big wins, especially in that, anywhere where investment's been made.
You heard him. A 20% reduction in build time and an 11% reduction in construction costs.
And all because the construction industry, which historically is not really that innovative, is shifting its focus and becoming more innovative, almost in spite of itself. Being more efficient in the manufacturing process, saving on waste, saving on time, saving money, and all in the service of the greater good, saving the planet.
This all brings us back to where we began this conversation with Sindhu, when she puts sustainability at the center of her work as an architect and a designer.
In my mind, sustainability is a responsibility. It is a responsibility we have to ourselves and to the planet, and to everyone that we share the planet with. And I think in that context, I think the idea that Canadian forests can save the world, it's the right approach. And I appreciate the sentiment and the ambition behind it. And, I don't see this as something that we need to do for ourselves. I think it's something that we need to do because it's the right thing to do. And we are privileged and lucky in that we have a significant amount of the world's forest land and world's land really that we have with us. And so with that privilege comes the responsibility of taking care of it.
Interesting thing to me, again, is when we seem to have these full circle moments. We're talking about 21st century forest management science that's bringing us to a place where this ancient earthly material is not only being used as an innovative technology, but it's playing a critical role in helping us cope with climate change. Timber was the primary building material before concrete and steel came along, and now we're seeing this evolutionary shift as mass timber and wooden construction is becoming the product of choice.
So in our next episode, we're going to trace that history back somewhat, and we're going to explore the connection between the commerce of Canada's forestry industry and how it's affected and shaped the development of our current forest management systems.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of Canadian Forestry Can Save the World. If you're listening on Apple, leave us a rating and a comment. And maybe you've got a question, so pass it along. For DT, our producer Becky Coles, and the entire SSN team, I'm Erin Trafford.
This podcast series is produced for Forestry for the Future. And for more information, I'd encourage you to visit the website forestryforthefuture.ca. And you may want to get involved in supporting a sector that's committed to growing a greener economy and driving our country towards a net zero carbon future for you and your kids. I'm Dave Trafford, and Canadian Forestry Can Save the World is produced by Story Studio Network.
This is SSN.